we asked Rishi Sunak, Christopher Hope asked Rishi Sunak a question, and I thought it was quite a ballsy question, actually. Let's just listen and I'll get the response from you.
To feel to be at a conference when most members didn't vote for you?
The conference, the spirit of conference is great. I've been out and about talking to members, talking to colleagues. People have a spring in their step. They can see that we're making progress.
Messing, because that is one of the things that comes through so thick and fast in my inbox. He wasn't elected, we voted for Truss and all the rest of it. What do you think to his response then?
Well, it's good to be honest, right? I mean, I was the last Japanese soldier on my jungle island defending Boris Johnson. I did a round of media on the morning he went, saying he shouldn't go. I must have been the last Tory on TV saying that. And then I voted for Liz Truss. Right, so I'm kind of doubly of that position. But you know what? Now he's in the role and doing it, I'm pretty glad that Rishi Sunak's our Prime Minister. It's possible to think all of those things, right? At the time that Boris Johnson was in post, I thought it was wrong, especially given he'd won the 2019 election so handsomely, for the party to do as it did. And then I thought Liz Truss never really got a chance to get out of the starting blocks. But my point is, I'm frank about it. I voted for her and not for Sunak. Now he's there. I think he's doing a good job.
Was morale good? Honestly?
It was far better than I've seen reported in the press. I saw that one journalist who contributes to this channel occasionally said that Manchester was a ghost town. I mean, I just don't recognise that at all. It felt pretty busy to me.
Well, it was raining, so people do try and take cover. But, I mean, ghost town, that's a bit odd. Look, before I bring Michael in as well, let's listen to one more clip from Rishi Sunak, asked by Christopher Hope earlier on.
Prime Minister, what do you stand for?
I stand for doing the right thing for the country in the long term, not taking the easy way out. I think that's the change that people want to see in their politics. That's the change that I'm going to bring. And you saw that with my decision on net zero. I did something that I thought was right. It was a big decision. And look, people could criticise me for that, but I thought what we're doing, the path we're on, is going to cost ordinary families £5,000, £10,000, £15,000. I didn't think that was right.
So, Michael, I'm going to get into, before the end of the programme, I want to touch on the Suella stuff towards the end, of course, the Steve Barclay and the NHS stuff and all that, but specifically on that point where Rishi Sunak's basically saying, look, I am the man for the job, I stand for the long-term, tough decisions. Do you buy that?
I don't think we've seen the evidence of that he's here for the long-term decisions. I mean, personally, I'm in favour of HS2. I would build it all the way up to Scotland if I could. I think that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of investment that would bring rewards. We'd get returns on that investment. I think scrapping that seems like a short-term decision to please some of the bean counters in the Treasury. Essentially, I think he's saying, oh, we can save a bit of money here, that will make my life easier. And I think that's really letting down future generations who would benefit from it.
But what he's saying is he's not bothered about, or as I'm interpreting what he's saying, he's not bothered about being popular. So stuff like the net zero is hitting people in their back pockets. He's got the chops to stand up and say, you know what, a lot of people will disagree with that, disagree with what I'm about to say, but so what? This is my principle. This is what I stand for.
Well, a lot of people do agree with him on that. I mean, that to me seems like that was an electoral play. He wanted to create a divide on climate change where there wasn't one. And I think what we've seen at this conference in general as well is that the Tories are really struggling to find a divide with the Labour Party, and that means they keep making things up, essentially. So we sort of, a government minister yesterday sort of announcing that the government would scrap the meat tax, which isn't in place, which no one has proposed, which the Labour Party aren't in favour of. And so I think they are sort of desperately searching for divisions which aren't necessarily there. Also, Sunak, in your news bulletin, was saying that he's the change candidate. I mean, we've had 13 years of Tory government and he's calling himself the change candidate. Michael
makes a good point, because it is a little bit odd, because there was the reference to the meat tax.
Yeah.
Then there was also that, was it 7 bins or something like that was scrapped the other day that didn't really ever exist. What is going on there?
Michael's completely right. Neither of those were Labour Party policies. They were both policies mooted by relevant select committees. And so the government has opposed something that never actually had seen its way onto potentially being on the statute books yet. But I think on the climate change point that Michael makes, the government's done 3 things which I think are slightly different in their tone. The first was shifting back the deadline from 2030 to 2035 for the sale of new combustible engine cars. That, for me, was just pragmatic, given that Germany and France, our major competitors in that space, had done the same. So that one, I just think...
But the pushback will be, hang on, because your businesses, they've geared up to the 2030 deadline.
I know.
And now you're messing messing business around.
I know, but my point would be it would be a completely different debate if Britain alone was changing that deadline and pushing it backwards. In fact, we were in European major motor manufacturers, the last one hanging on to that earlier deadline. So that one I just thought was pragmatic. The second one on anti-ULEZ type stuff, if I just bracket it like that, Michael's right, it was wildly popular. And let's be honest again, it's the only reason the Conservative Party won the by-election in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Otherwise, we were doing pretty badly in Boris Johnson's old seat, and we hung on to that solely because of ULEZ. I've never seen a single issue play so prominently a role. So the Conservative Party's taken a position that is very popular. The third one on the housing stuff and insulation and so forth, that in the long term people are going to have more of an issue with. But there's no doubt it was going to impose more costs on householders. So he's got a point.
What do you think about this? I mean, it has dominated the conference this time around, the HS2. Michael says he would agree, send it all the way to Scotland. Where are you?
It's a great demonstration of my party's failure to think things through in terms of political capital. If we'd started HS2 at the northern end, where it was actually wanted the most and was popular, then by the time you got down to the leafy Chesham and Amersham seats we lose because of HS2 type arrangements, you might have had, no pun intended, some momentum behind you to carry on through with it. Instead, we've taken all of the political pain, building it where it was the hardest to build, where the opposition was the strongest.
Why was that?
I'm sure that some people were maintaining that was the smartest thing to do on engineering and so forth, and there's some technical reasons. The thing is, you've got to be more political about these things. The thing is, people come out of this conference saying the Tories party have been too political with stuff. Well, I'd rather we were more political over stuff like HS2.
Well, I suppose, the problem with HS2 was short-term political sort of bargaining, wasn't it? Because what you had all these Tory MPs who didn't want to see a high-speed train. Like, I think a high-speed train going through the countryside is a nice enough thing to look at. They were all complaining. That means that so much of it is tunnelled that the costs completely ballooned. So it was a party leadership which was unwilling to take on its backbenchers that meant it rose to £100 billion, and now it's not going to go from Manchester, and we're just going to get something from the outskirts of London to the outskirts of Birmingham.
The ballooning costs are about lots of things, but you've certainly got a point about the increased cost. I do think there is a lesson to learn from HS1. There are two. The first is that it can work, and it can be, even though people regard these things as expensive white elephants, they can have real impact. But the second is that people may build without tunnelling, and they may give you a station to say that they're going to sweeten the deal and help it. But then, sometimes when it suits the contractors, they'll close the station. And the people right now in Ashford or Ebbsfleet or Calais-Fretin know all about that. So sometimes you're right to be sceptical when you effectively get bought off as a local community, because people say, don't worry, we're going to give you a station and it's going to bring lots of economic growth. Because the first opportunity they've got to take out those intermediary stations, sometimes the train companies stops providing them.
But then why have they been so slow to act? Because in July 2020, the Infrastructure and Projects Authority gave HS2 the highest risk warning possible. So, I mean, this is almost 3 years ago. So why is it now taking to and obviously we've scrapped the leg up to Leeds as well. That bit has gone. So why is it taking to this kind of timing now to say, right, actually, things are getting out of control? Because what I don't understand about the Tories, it's almost like you've just come along last week and you're sitting up and going, this project is wildly out of control. Well, hang on a second, because you've been overseeing government in this country now for a decade plus. Yep. You've had regular reports from all of these bodies and committees. There's been God knows how many reviews. So why is it only now that people have realised, on my watch, it's got out of control? There
is a small and partial excuse, which I don't pretend is sufficient, which is the impact of COVID on grand infrastructure projects around the world has been significant. But if you put that to one side, I think in answer to your question, there are three answers. The first is, each time people looked at it, they said, you've highlighted the risk, we're going to control that and we're going to make it better. We're going to bring costs down and we're going to control it. Instead, every review showed the costs were still going up. But that was the mindset with which people went into it. The second was that this is an issue on which there are genuine, strongly divided opinions on both sides within political parties, not just between them. There are strong HS2 advocates and strong HS2 critics within the Tory party, as well as on the other side.
Well, you know what? I'll let you have the final word